The day my daughter sold all my furniture, I was sitting very still, in a way that only someone who has lived a long life learns how to sit. My hands were folded in my lap, not because I was praying, but because I did not know where else to put them. My body felt heavy, yet empty at the same time, like something important had quietly slipped away without asking for permission. I remember that moment clearly, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was painfully calm. I was not crying. I was not shouting. I was not asking questions. I was simply sitting there, breathing slowly, as if my body already knew what my heart was not ready to accept. The sunlight was coming through the window in soft lines, the same way it had every morning for years. It touched the floor gently, spreading across places where my old sofa used to rest. The light did not change, but the room did. The walls felt wider than before, almost too wide, like they had stepped back from me. The space felt unfamiliar, even though I had lived there most of my life. It felt like the room itself had forgotten who I was. I looked around and felt like a guest in my own home, someone who had arrived too late, after everything meaningful had already been taken away. That house had been my world for many years. I had cooked in that kitchen through happy days and painful ones. I had prepared meals when my daughter was small, wiping her hands, listening to her stories, watching her grow. I had stood at that same counter when my husband was alive, when we laughed about small things, when money was tight but hope was strong. I had rested on that old sofa after long days when my knees hurt and my back felt tired, days when my body reminded me that time does not slow down for anyone. That sofa held my weight, my tears, my quiet prayers. Every piece of furniture carried a memory, not a loud one, not a proud one, but a quiet and gentle memory that stayed with me like a soft breath. And now they were gone. At that moment, I did not know yet that my daughter had sold them. I did not know the full truth. I only knew that something was missing, something important, something that could not be replaced easily. My heart sensed it before my mind could understand it. I stood there trying to make sense of the emptiness, trying to convince myself that there was a simple explanation. I told myself that maybe the furniture had been moved for cleaning, or repairs, or some kind of rearranging that I had not been told about yet. That is what I told myself, because I had learned over the years that gentle lies are sometimes easier than painful truths. I always told myself these soft excuses so my heart could stay calm a little longer. But deep inside, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes at night, but a sharp, uncomfortable silence that presses against your ears. It was too empty, as if all the warmth had been carried away along with the furniture. It was too clean, almost cold, like a place that had been cleared for someone else, not for me. Even the air felt different, thinner somehow, as if it no longer belonged to my breathing. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting as they always did, and I began walking from room to room. I moved carefully, like someone afraid to disturb something fragile. In the dining area, the chairs were gone. The chairs where my family once sat together, where conversations flowed, where silence was shared without discomfort. The small table where I used to fold laundry was gone too, the place where I stood for hours, smoothing clothes, thinking about life, about worries I never spoke out loud. Even the old wooden cabinet was gone, the one my late husband had brought home with his very first paycheck, his face full of pride as he told me it was not much, but it was a start. That cabinet had survived everything life threw at us. It had survived storms that rattled the windows, debts that kept us awake at night, sickness that weakened our bodies, and grief that nearly broke my heart when my husband passed away. That cabinet stood silently through it all, holding our belongings, our papers, our memories. It had been part of our survival, but it did not survive my daughter. I remember placing my hand against the wall to steady myself, not because I felt dizzy, but because my heart felt like it had slipped out of its place. It was as if something inside me had shifted suddenly, leaving a hollow ache behind. I leaned there for a moment, feeling the cool surface under my palm, reminding myself that I was still standing, still breathing, still alive. The house felt unfamiliar, but my pain felt very real. In a soft voice, barely louder than a whisper, I said to myself that maybe she would tell me soon. Maybe she just needed time. Maybe she was planning to explain everything gently. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. Hope has a strange way of surviving even when it is wounded. But she did not tell me. She walked past me later that day as if nothing had changed, as if the empty rooms were normal, as if my silence did not matter. She did not look at my face long enough to see the questions waiting there. She did not ask how I felt. She did not explain. She simply moved on, and in that moment, something inside me understood what my mind had been refusing to accept. That was the moment I realized something important. This was no accident. This was no misunderstanding. This was no simple rearrangement or temporary change. This was a choice. And my home, the place where I had given my life, my love, and my years, had stopped feeling like mine. I raised my daughter with soft hands, the kind of hands that learned early how to hold without squeezing too tight. From the moment she was placed in my arms, I promised myself that fear would never be the language of our home. I did not want her to grow up afraid of voices, footsteps, or silence. I wanted her to feel safe enough to make mistakes, to ask questions, and to come back to me when the world became too heavy for her young heart. I was not a perfect mother, and I never pretended to be one. I made mistakes like everyone else. There were days when I was tired, days when I was confused, days when I doubted myself. But even on those days, I tried my best to choose kindness over anger and patience over pride. I rarely raised my voice, and when I did, it was never out of cruelty. It was fear that forced it out of me, fear for her safety, fear of losing her to a world that can be unkind to children who feel unloved. I never locked doors in anger, never shut her out to make a point. I never used silence as a punishment, because I knew how painful silence can be. I wanted her to understand that love does not disappear when mistakes happen. Love stays, even when it is tired, even when it is tested. Her father and I worked hard to give her a simple but steady life. We did not have much money, but we had routines, laughter, and respect. He was a quiet man with a gentle smile, the kind of man who believed that showing up every day was more important than saying big words. When he passed away, the ground beneath my feet felt like it had disappeared. Grief does not announce itself loudly at first. It settles into your bones slowly, teaching you how to live with pain instead of without it. After he was gone, I worked even harder, not just to earn money, but to hold our family together with whatever strength I had left. I learned how to be both gentle and strong at the same time, even when my body was tired and my heart was aching. I learned how to smile when my daughter needed comfort, even if my own tears were waiting until the night. I learned how to carry responsibility quietly, because there was no one else to carry it for me. I did not want my daughter to feel the weight of my struggles. I wanted her to feel supported, protected, and free to dream. That house was not just a building to me. It was the last thing my husband left behind, the final proof that our life together had been real. Every corner carried his breath, his laughter, his patience. I could hear him in the creak of the floors and feel him in the stillness of the evenings. The walls had listened to our conversations, our arguments, and our apologies. The house had held our lives gently, without judgment. It became a place where memories lived quietly, waiting to be remembered. When my daughter married, I welcomed her husband like a son, not because I felt I had to, but because I truly believed that family grows when love is shared, not divided. I did not see marriage as a reason for distance. I saw it as a reason for more understanding, more care, and more patience. I opened my heart and my home to him, trusting that respect would flow naturally. I believed that if I treated him with kindness, he would see me not as a burden, but as part of his new family. When they fell on hard times, I did not hesitate. I told them to come live with me, to rest, to rebuild, to find their footing again. I said it without conditions and without rules, because I believed that helping your child is not charity. It is duty. I did not ask how long they would stay or what they would contribute. I did not set boundaries because I did not think I needed to. In my heart, this was still our home, and I believed there was space enough for all of us. At first, things were peaceful. The days moved slowly and the nights were calm. I cooked meals the way I always had, with care and quiet love. She rested, grateful for the break from her worries. I listened when she spoke, letting her share her fears and frustrations. She spoke freely then, without hesitation, without distance. The house felt alive again, filled with voices and movement. But slowly, the air began to change, so gently that I did not notice it at first. Changes rarely announce themselves. They arrive in small moments, in short silences, in looks that linger a second too long or avoid you completely. She stopped asking me before making decisions. She started deciding on her own, as if my opinion no longer mattered. Small things shifted first, things that seemed harmless. Furniture moved. Schedules changed. Plans were made without including me. She rearranged things without telling me, not in a cruel way, but in a way that made me feel unseen. She spoke to me like I was a visitor, someone who happened to be there, not someone who belonged. Her tone was not unkind, but it was distant, polite in the way people are polite to strangers. It was like she was tolerating an old habit rather than living with her mother. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was overthinking. I reminded myself that young people need space, that they need to feel independent, that this was a normal part of life. I pushed my discomfort aside and chose understanding, because that is what I had always done. I believed patience would bring balance back, that love would smooth out the rough edges. What I did not know was that this space was not being made for growth or independence. It was being made for my absence. It happened quietly, so quietly that even now, when I look back, it feels unreal, like something that should have made noise but chose silence instead. There was no argument that morning, no raised voices, no harsh words thrown across the room. There was no warning that something important was about to be taken from me. There was no goodbye to the things that had shared my life for decades. Everything was done without sound, without ceremony, without respect. Silence can be gentle sometimes, but that day, it was sharp and cutting, the kind that leaves wounds you cannot see. That morning, I left the house early to go to the clinic. My joints were aching, and the doctor had asked me to come in for a routine check. I remember locking the door behind me and taking one last look at the living room, the sofa sitting in its usual place, the cabinet standing quietly against the wall, the chairs gathered around the table like they always had been. Nothing looked different then. Nothing warned me that when I returned, my home would feel stripped of its soul. When I came back a few hours later, the first thing I noticed was the space. The house felt strangely open, like someone had pushed the walls outward. At first, my mind could not understand what my eyes were seeing. The furniture was gone. Not broken, not damaged, not carelessly tossed aside. It had been taken carefully, deliberately, as if it belonged to someone else. The floor was bare, clean in a way that felt unnatural. The marks where furniture once stood were faint but visible, like shadows of memories that refused to leave. For a moment, I just stood there at the door, my bag still hanging from my arm. I felt frozen, as if my body was waiting for an explanation to arrive before it allowed me to move. My heart started beating faster, not from fear, but from disbelief. I walked slowly into the room, my steps echoing in the emptiness. Each step made the silence louder. I called out her name, softly at first, then a little louder. She appeared from the other room, calm, almost casual, as if nothing had changed. I asked her where the sofa was, the words coming out slower than I expected, as if my mouth was struggling to form them. She did not look at me. Her eyes stayed focused on something else, maybe the floor, maybe her phone. Her face did not change. She simply said that they needed money. That was all she said. No hesitation, no regret. Just those few words, spoken plainly, like she was explaining something ordinary. There was no apology in her voice, no explanation of why she had not told me, no request for permission. She did not ask how I felt or whether I agreed. She did not acknowledge that the furniture belonged to me or that the memories tied to it were mine. She said it as if the decision had already been made long before I even knew it existed. I stood there holding my bag, my fingers tightening around the handle without realizing it. In that moment, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. Smaller than when my husband died. Smaller than when I struggled to raise a child alone. Smaller than when I faced hardship with nothing but hope to guide me. This was different. This was the feeling of being erased quietly, of watching your place in your own life shrink without anyone asking your permission. That sofa was not just furniture to me. It was where I sat when my husband took his last breath, where I held myself together when my world fell apart. It was where my daughter slept during her fever as a child, her small body curled beside me while I stayed awake all night, afraid she might stop breathing if I closed my eyes. It was where I prayed in silence when I had no answers, when I asked God for strength instead of miracles. That sofa had held my pain, my love, my fear, and my hope. It had been part of my healing. She sold it like it was nothing. As the truth settled in, I learned that she had not sold just one piece. She had sold everything. Every chair, every table, every item that had quietly shared my life. Even the cabinet was gone, the one my husband bought with his first paycheck, the one that carried his pride and our early dreams. That cabinet had survived years of hardship, but it did not survive this moment. What hurt me most was not just that she sold them, but that she did not care who bought them. She had no idea where they went, whose hands touched them, whose homes they now belonged to. She never thought she needed to know. To her, they were just objects that could be exchanged for money. To me, they were pieces of a life carefully built and slowly lived. In that silence, standing in the empty room, I realized that something deeper had been taken from me. It was not only my furniture that was gone. It was the understanding that my memories mattered. It was the belief that my place in that house was secure. It was the quiet trust that a daughter would protect what her mother held sacred. And that was when the conflict truly began, not with shouting or anger, but with a silence that spoke louder than words ever could. A week passed after the furniture disappeared, a slow and heavy week where every day felt longer than the one before it. Time moved differently inside that empty house. Mornings came without warmth, and nights felt stretched, as if sleep itself was unsure where to settle. I tried to keep myself busy, cleaning corners that were already clean, folding clothes that did not need folding, sitting and standing without reason. Silence followed me everywhere, and in that silence, my thoughts grew louder. I replayed moments from my past, trying to understand where things had changed, when love had quietly turned into distance. Then one afternoon, the phone rang. I remember staring at it for a moment before answering, unsure why my hands felt suddenly cold. When I picked up, the voice on the other end was calm and gentle, the kind of voice that carries respect without trying too hard. He introduced himself slowly, politely, like someone who did not want to intrude. He said he hoped he was not disturbing me, and those words alone felt strange, because no one had worried about disturbing me in a long time. He explained that he had bought some furniture from a young woman the week before. As he spoke, my heart began to beat faster, though I did not interrupt him. He mentioned a wooden cabinet, an old one, solid and well cared for. He said he had noticed something carved inside it, small and faded, but still clear enough to read. When he said the name, my throat tightened so suddenly that I had to close my eyes. It was my husband's name. Hearing it spoken by a stranger felt like someone had gently touched a wound that never fully healed. My chest felt heavy, and for a moment I could not speak. The man on the phone paused, as if he sensed my silence carried weight. He spoke again, softer this time, and said that after seeing the name, he felt something was not right. He said he could not explain it properly, but he felt the cabinet did not truly belong to him. He said he wanted to return it. Those words settled over me like a quiet rain. He did not know me. He did not know my husband. He did not know the story of that house or the years we had lived inside it. And yet, he felt more responsibility toward my memories than the person who had sold them. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that respect does not come from blood alone. Sometimes, it comes from strangers who understand value without being told. That was when it became clear to me. Strangers had shown me more respect than my own child. The man who bought the cabinet did not know my daughter. He did not know her struggles, her worries, or her reasons, but he knew value. He saw history carved into wood. He felt the weight of another person's life resting quietly inside an object. And my daughter, who knew my entire story, who had grown up surrounded by those memories, knew neither. When I ended the call, my hands were shaking slightly, not from anger, but from something deeper. I sat there holding the phone, thinking about how gently that man had spoken, how carefully he had chosen his words. Then I went to my daughter and told her what had happened. I told her someone wanted to return the cabinet, that he felt it did not belong to him. She laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, but lightly, as if the idea itself was foolish. She said it was already sold. She said it was none of my concern anymore. Her words were sharp, not because of their tone, but because of their finality. They closed a door I did not know was still open. That was the moment something inside me closed too. Not in anger, not in hatred, not even in sadness the way sadness usually feels. It closed gently. It was the quiet closing of understanding, the kind that comes when you stop hopping for something that will never arrive. I understood then that my pain was invisible to her, that my memories were negotiable, that my place in that house had changed forever. And in that understanding, I felt a strange calm settle over me, like the acceptance that comes after a long struggle. That was the turning point. Not because something dramatic happened, but because I finally saw the truth clearly, without excuses, without gentle lies to protect my heart. I learned that day that love without respect becomes something fragile, and once broken, it never sounds the same again. After everything had been taken, after the truth settled into my bones, and the house felt like a place I no longer recognized, I made a choice that surprised even me. I did not fight her. I did not raise my voice or demand explanations that would never be honest. I did not shout to remind her of everything I had given or everything I had lost. I did not cry in front of her, not because I felt nothing, but because my tears had become too private, too sacred to be wasted where they would not be understood. Instead, I grew quiet in a different way, not the silence of fear or defeat, but the silence of someone who finally understands that words can no longer fix what has been broken. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped reminding her of the memories tied to those objects. I stopped hoping that if I spoke gently enough, she would suddenly see me again. I had spent a lifetime explaining myself to the world, making space for others, softening my needs so no one would feel uncomfortable. In that moment, I realized that continuing to explain was only shrinking me further. It was asking for recognition from someone who had already chosen not to look. The lesson I learned was painful, but it was necessary. When people stop seeing your value, reminding them does not bring it back. Love cannot be forced open by repeating your worth. Respect cannot be begged into existence. Once someone decides that your presence is optional, your pain becomes invisible to them, no matter how clearly you describe it. Understanding this did not come with relief at first. It came with grief, the kind that settles quietly and changes the way you breathe. I began sitting in the empty rooms without fear. At first, it felt uncomfortable, like sitting beside a stranger. But slowly, I allowed myself to be there fully, without distractions, without pretending the emptiness was temporary. I let the silence surround me. I listened to it. I stopped fighting it. In that quiet, I found something unexpected. The silence was not empty after all. It was full of memories, full of echoes, full of everything I had lived and survived. I started speaking to my husband in my heart the way I used to when he was alive. I told him about the house, about the changes, about the quiet betrayal that had taken place without his presence to witness it. I told him I finally understood something we had talked about long ago, something I had not truly believed back then. He used to say that kindness should never cost you your dignity. At the time, I thought dignity was something you could protect simply by being good. Now I knew better. I told him that love does not mean allowing yourself to disappear. It does not mean shrinking so others can feel comfortable. It does not mean accepting disrespect in the name of peace. Love can be gentle and still be strong. Love can forgive without forgetting. Love can step back when staying means losing yourself completely. As the days passed, I noticed a change in myself. I was still sad, but I was no longer desperate. I no longer watched my daughter's face, waiting for signs of regret or understanding. I no longer measured my worth by her attention or approval. I began to reclaim the parts of myself I had quietly set aside over the years. I took longer walks. I rested without guilt. I allowed myself moments of peace, even inside a house that no longer felt like home. I knew that one day, my daughter would remember what she sold. It might not happen soon. It might come years later, in a moment she does not expect. She will sit somewhere and miss the comfort of a familiar chair. She will search for something that once made her feel safe and realize it is gone. And when that day comes, she will understand that it was never just furniture that left that house. It was her mother. Not the woman who raised her, not the body that cooked and cleaned and endured, but the presence that held her life together quietly, without asking for recognition. I do not wish her pain when that realization arrives. I wish her understanding. Because understanding, even when it comes late, has the power to change a person. And as for me, I no longer beg to be seen. I stand in my truth, quiet and steady, knowing that my worth does not disappear just because someone chose not to notice it. My life, my love, and my memories still belong to me, and that is something no one can ever sell. Today, the house is still simple. It does not carry the same fullness it once did, and the corners feel wider, emptier, quieter. The rooms are calm, but they hold traces of the life that lived here before, the laughter that bounced off the walls, the quiet conversations, the moments of worry, hope, and love that were etched into every surface. Some furniture never came back. The sofa, the cabinet, the chairs that cradled our bodies and our memories, they are gone, moved to homes I will never see, touched by hands that do not know their history. Some memories never will return either, though they linger in my mind like faint echoes, gentle reminders of a life lived fully, even in loss. And yet, despite the emptiness, despite the quiet that sometimes presses too hard against my chest, I am still here. I am still breathing. I am still moving through this space that has both hurt me and taught me. I learned something late in life, something that might have saved me years of silent suffering if I had understood it sooner. I want you to know it too, not as a lesson of anger or resentment, but as a truth you can carry gently in your heart. Being kind does not mean being invisible. It does not mean shrinking yourself so others feel comfortable. Kindness can coexist with strength, and gentleness can coexist with boundaries. Being patient does not mean being powerless. Waiting, forgiving, breathing through the moments of hurt, they are not signs of weakness. They are choices, deliberate and strong, made to protect yourself while still honoring your humanity. And being a parent, I learned, does not mean accepting disrespect in silence. It does not mean allowing others to take pieces of your life without consent, without understanding, without regard. Love can coexist with firmness, with boundaries, and with the quiet assertion of your own worth. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is sit quietly and let people see the empty space they created. You do not need to shout, to plead, or to beg. You do not need to explain again and again why your life, your feelings, your memories matter. Just sit, just breathe, just be. Let them walk through the rooms of their own making and notice, or maybe not. The awareness will come to them in time, or it may not, but either way, your presence will remain steady, unwavering, and true. That quiet strength teaches more than anger ever could, more than shouting ever could. It teaches respect, for yourself first, and for the life you have carried through joy and sorrow alike. If someone ever takes pieces of your life without asking, if someone ever disregards the love and effort you have poured into your world, remember this. Your worth was never in what they sold, in what they moved, in what they discarded or forgot. Your value was never in the objects, the moments, or the small daily things you held close. It was and always will be in who you are. In the resilience you carry, in the quiet patience that does not break under pressure, in the love you give and the wisdom you gain even when it costs you deeply. That essence cannot be touched, cannot be sold, cannot be diminished. It exists within you, quietly, powerfully, indestructibly. I want you to remember that. I want you to carry it with you, to let it settle into your bones and your breath. You are not defined by what others take from you, or what they fail to see. You are defined by the strength of your spirit, by the gentleness of your heart, by the courage to continue even when the world has turned against you. And that, my dear listener, is something no one can ever take away. Some things may be lost. Some spaces may remain empty. But you, your heart, your mind, your spirit, remain full, always full. And in that fullness you find not only survival but quiet triumph, a deep knowing that despite everything, you are whole, you are enough, and you are unshakable. And that is what I want you to know. That is what I have learned through loss, through quiet betrayal, through watching pieces of my life slip away without warning. You are more than the things around you, more than the hands that fail to cherish you, more than the voices that overlook your presence. You are the sum of your love, your courage, your enduring strength. You are irreplaceable, and that can never, ever be taken away. The house may remain quiet. Some furniture may never return. Some memories may fade into soft shadows. But I am still here, and that is enough, always mine. Weeks passed after the house lost its familiar shape, and time settled into a slow, quiet rhythm that felt heavier with each passing day. Nothing dramatic happened. There were no arguments, no apologies, no sudden changes that anyone could point to and say, "This is when everything shifted." The house simply stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that presses gently against your chest and reminds you of what is missing. Each morning came and went with the same stillness, and each night stretched longer than the one before it. One night I woke up thirsty. My mouth felt dry and sleep had already slipped away from me, so I got out of bed and walked slowly toward the kitchen. The house was dark, except for a soft light glowing at the table. As I stepped closer, I saw my daughter sitting there alone, her head resting in her hands. The light above her was dim, casting gentle shadows across her face and shoulders. She looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in spirit. Her shoulders were heavy, rounded forward, as if the weight she had been avoiding was finally settling where it belonged. She did not hear me at first. The house was so quiet that even my footsteps felt loud to me, yet she remained still, lost in her thoughts. I stood there for a moment, watching her, and something inside my chest tightened. I was looking at the same child I once rocked to sleep, the same child whose tears I wiped away when she was afraid of the dark, the same child who used to run toward me without hesitation. And now she sat there, just a few steps away, carrying something she did not know how to put down. She finally looked up and saw me standing there. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, time seemed to pause. In that moment, I saw something flicker across her face. It looked like hesitation, like fear, like a question she was not sure she was allowed to ask. Her lips parted slightly, and it seemed as if she wanted to speak. It felt like she wanted to say sorry, or maybe she wanted to explain, or maybe she simply wanted to ask for reassurance that it was not too late. But pride is loud, even when it does not speak. And regret is shy, especially when it does not know if it will be welcomed. She looked away first and asked me if I was okay. Her voice was careful, controlled, as if she was testing the ground before taking another step. I could hear the effort it took for her to say even that much. I could feel the words she did not say pressing behind the ones she chose. I told her yes. It was a simple answer, spoken calmly, without emotion, but I could see it land heavily on her. That one word hurt her more than anger ever could. If I had shouted, she could have defended herself. If I had cried, she could have told herself that emotions pass. But my calm told her something she was not ready to hear. It told her that the distance between us was real. It told her that something had changed quietly, deeply, and maybe permanently. She nodded and said nothing more. I filled my glass with water and went back to my room, leaving her alone at the table with her thoughts. That night, I did not sleep easily. Not because I was angry, but because I felt the weight of understanding settle between us, unspoken and heavy. From that night on, she became quieter. Not withdrawn in an obvious way, but softer, slower, as if she was walking carefully through her own life. She stopped laughing the same way she used to. Her laughter, when it came, sounded brief and uncertain, like something borrowed rather than owned. She started noticing the empty spaces, too. I saw her eyes linger on corners of the room that used to be full. I saw her pause before sitting down, before setting things aside, before moving through the house. She did not say anything about it. She did not admit regret out loud. But regret does not always announce itself with words. Sometimes it shows up in the way someone moves more carefully, the way they avoid certain topics, the way their eyes soften when they look at what they once dismissed. Regret does not always ask for forgiveness. Sometimes it just sits beside you, heavy and silent, reminding you of what you chose and what that choice cost. One afternoon, she came to me with red eyes, the kind of red that does not come from dust or tiredness, but from holding back tears for too long. I was sitting by the window when I noticed her standing there, unsure of whether to come closer or turn away. For a moment, she reminded me of the little girl she used to be, the one who would hesitate at the doorway when she knew she had done something wrong, gathering courage before stepping into the room. Time had changed her face, but not that look. That look was the same. She sat down slowly, keeping some distance between us, as if she was afraid that being too close might make everything spill out at once. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, fingers pressing into one another. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and uneven. She said she did not think the furniture mattered so much. She said she was thinking only about money, only about survival, only about getting through difficult days without drowning. She spoke quickly at first, as if explaining it fast would make it easier, as if speed could soften the truth. She did not say sorry. But her voice trembled, and that tremble carried more weight than an apology spoken too easily ever could. I could hear the regret she was not brave enough to name. I could hear the fear of being judged, the fear of being rejected, the fear that even now, forgiveness might be out of reach. She looked at the floor while she spoke, avoiding my eyes, as if she already believed she did not deserve my gaze. I listened. I always listen. Listening has always been my way of loving, even when it costs me something. I did not interrupt her. I did not rush to comfort her or correct her words. I let the silence between her sentences breathe. I let her say what she could, even if it was incomplete. Sometimes people can only tell half the truth at first. The rest comes later, when they feel safe enough to face it. When she finished speaking, the room felt very still. I could feel her waiting, holding her breath, expecting either anger or disappointment. Instead, I spoke gently, not because I was weak, but because gentleness was the only way this conversation could survive. I told her something I had learned slowly over many years, something life had taught me through loss and pain. I told her that forgiveness is not a gift we give to make others feel better. It is not something we offer to erase consequences or pretend nothing happened. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves so we can breathe again, so our hearts do not harden under the weight of what has hurt us. I told her I forgave her. The words settled between us quietly. She looked up then, her eyes filling with tears she could no longer hold back. But even as I forgave her, I made sure my voice did not hide the truth. I told her that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgetting would mean pretending the pain was not real. Forgetting would mean allowing the same wound to open again. I told her that some lessons must be remembered, not to punish, but to protect. I explained to her that love must have respect to survive. Love without respect does not grow stronger with time. It grows tired. It turns into something heavy and painful, something that hurts every time it is touched. Without respect, love becomes a wound that never heals, no matter how much you try to cover it. I wanted her to understand that my forgiveness did not erase the boundary that had been crossed. It simply meant I chose peace over bitterness. She cried quietly then, her shoulders shaking as she tried to stay composed. Her tears were soft, not loud or dramatic. They were the tears of someone finally facing the cost of their choices. I moved closer and held her, not as someone who had been wronged demanding comfort, but as a mother who understood human weakness. I held her the way I used to when she was younger, steady and calm, letting her cry without rushing her to stop. In that embrace, I felt both sadness and clarity. Sadness for what had been lost, and clarity for what had been learned. I knew our relationship would never return to what it once was, and that was not a failure. It was simply the truth. Some changes cannot be undone, but they can be understood. Forgiveness closed one door that day, the door of resentment that would have kept me trapped in anger. But wisdom opened another, a door that allowed me to love without losing myself, to care without disappearing, to move forward with open eyes and a steady heart. Today, the house is still simple. It does not carry the same fullness it once did, and the corners feel wider, emptier, quieter. The rooms are calm, but they hold traces of the life that lived here before, the laughter that bounced off the walls, the quiet conversations, the moments of worry, hope, and love that were etched into every surface. Some furniture never came back. The sofa, the cabinet, the chairs that cradled our bodies and our memories, they are gone, moved to homes I will never see, touched by hands that do not know their history. Some memories never will return either, though they linger in my mind like faint echoes, gentle reminders of a life lived fully, even in loss. And yet, despite the emptiness, despite the quiet that sometimes presses too hard against my chest, I am still here. I am still breathing. I am still moving through this space that has both hurt me and taught me. I learned something late in life, something that might have saved me years of silent suffering if I had understood it sooner. I want you to know it too, not as a lesson of anger or resentment, but as a truth you can carry gently in your heart. Being kind does not mean being invisible. It does not mean shrinking yourself so others feel comfortable. Kindness can coexist with strength, and gentleness can coexist with boundaries. Being patient does not mean being powerless. Waiting, forgiving, breathing through the moments of hurt, they are not signs of weakness. They are choices, deliberate and strong, made to protect yourself while still honoring your humanity. And being a parent, I learned, does not mean accepting disrespect in silence. It does not mean allowing others to take pieces of your life without consent, without understanding, without regard. Love can coexist with firmness, with boundaries, and with the quiet assertion of your own worth. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is sit quietly and let people see the empty space they created. You do not need to shout, to plead, or to beg. You do not need to explain again and again why your life, your feelings, your memories matter. Just sit, just breathe, just be. Let them walk through the rooms of their own making and notice, or maybe not. The awareness will come to them in time, or it may not, but either way, your presence will remain steady, unwavering, and true. That quiet strength teaches more than anger ever could, more than shouting ever could. It teaches respect, for yourself first, and for the life you have carried through joy and sorrow alike. If someone ever takes pieces of your life without asking, if someone ever disregards the love and effort you have poured into your world, remember this. Your worth was never in what they sold, in what they moved, in what they discarded or forgot. Your value was never in the objects, the moments, or the small daily things you held close. It was and always will be in who you are. In the resilience you carry, in the quiet patience that does not break under pressure, in the love you give and the wisdom you gain even when it costs you deeply. That essence cannot be touched, cannot be sold, cannot be diminished. It exists within you, quietly, powerfully, indestructibly. I want you to remember that. I want you to carry it with you, to let it settle into your bones and your breath. You are not defined by what others take from you, or what they fail to see. You are defined by the strength of your spirit, by the gentleness of your heart, by the courage to continue even when the world has turned against you. And that, my dear listener, is something no one can ever take away. Some things may be lost. Some spaces may remain empty. But you, your heart, your mind, your spirit, remain full, always full. And in that fullness you find not only survival but quiet triumph, a deep knowing that despite everything, you are whole, you are enough, and you are unshakable. And that is what I want you to know. That is what I have learned through loss, through quiet betrayal, through watching pieces of my life slip away without warning. You are more than the things around you, more than the hands that fail to cherish you, more than the voices that overlook your presence. You are the sum of your love, your courage, your enduring strength. You are irreplaceable, and that can never, ever be taken away. The house may remain quiet. Some furniture may never return. Some memories may fade into soft shadows. But I am still here, and that is enough, always mine.